Sir Desmond Plummer was leader of the GLC when the 70s started. Sir Reginald Goodwin took over when Labour won in 1973, and Sir Horace Cutler is the man in charge as we go into the 80s. Sir Desmond, as we said, you were in the hot seat when the decade began. Did the 70s fulfill your expectations, and if not, where were your disappointments?
I think the disappointments were ones that, looking back, we probably attempted too much at one time, in that we were full of enthusiasm for doing things and getting them done, which hadn't been done, largely due to the war. We'd come through a very difficult period in the previous 20 years when the idea then was to bulldoze down everything and put up the new housing, when in fact, in the 70s, people thought the planners were wrong, and that what we ought to have done was to retain much more of the old and the familiar, and thus kept people in an environment which they knew, and cut down the vandalism and the difficulties with the young, which arose from these anonymous skyscraper towers of council flats, which of course were anonymous and very destroying.
Sir Reg, did you have any regrets if you had your time over again? Would you have changed things?
Like Sir Desmond, I very much regret the wholesale building of tower blocks, flats, which have led to appalling social problems. I don't regret in the least the abandonment of what was called the motorway box and Ringway 2. I think the environmental damage that those would have done would have been enormous, and with hindsight, I would very much doubt whether they would have been completed in view of inflation and the general economic situation of the country.
I'm disappointed, of course, that the population's moved out. It's not going so rapidly as it was. I don't think we shall lose 1 million in the next decade. I'm hoping that by virtue of our resources going into the inner city, the derelict docklands, that we shall in fact make it a better place for people to come and live and work and play and visit.
Well, can we have a look now forward to the 80s? Some of the problems that face London, the list is fairly endless. Transport, roads, unemployment, education, housing, inner city decay, docks, energy, inflation, race relations, an endless list of headaches. What do you see as the greatest challenge?
I would have thought the greatest challenge of all is to retain employment in London. There are a huge number of firms who are leaving London now, I know from personal experience, because they feel that they can get better accommodation elsewhere and better conditions for their staff. Now, during the early 70s, we started the Jubilee line, we built the line to Heathrow, the Victoria line was finished. I think we've got to go on improving communications, and this is where I disagree with Sir Reginald. I think that London does need a relief road within its boundaries in order to keep this enormous quantity of traffic which is generated within London and goes on pushing through the shopping centres and all through the residential districts, and to relieve people of this terrible thundering traffic that goes on night and day.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fair summary too. I was disappointed that the strategic road pattern was abandoned. I think that will be looked at back in next 20 or 30 years with some regret, even though the cost was enormous. Nevertheless, it's, in order to make the place move, one has to be able to move freely. That's one of the advantages of a road pattern.
How do you restore confidence in the inner city areas, the poorer areas like Brixton, like Lambeth, like Tower Hamlets? What hope can you hold out for the people who have to live in those areas?
You must create jobs.
And how do you do that?
You need the capital, which the private sector can give. You need government aid, I think, towards industrial redevelopment. And you need to put in the necessary, what's called the infrastructure, a very ugly word, but this is all the drainage, the roads, the public transport.
I think that is true, and in particular I think you've got to provide the means of communication.
We've lost all the young people from inner London. That's the great shame of the thing. They've got to be brought back somehow. This is the next generation. I always talk to the next generation if I can. It is their future that is at stake.
Can I ask you in a word, are you optimistic about the future, about the 80s particularly?
Yeah, I'm always an optimist, and I think that if, let me put it in the round, if you get London prosperous, I think the whole country is going to be prosperous.
Well, on that note we'll end, and may we wish you all a very happy 1980.
Thank you.
So, Sir Horace Cutler is optimistic about the 80s, but what about the man and the woman in the street? What do they want for London in the next decade?
I'd like to see most private cars not allowed into the centre of London unless they have special priorities, such as invalids or something like that. If it's going on like this, we'll have cars tail to bumper and nothing else but that.
I'd like to see Oxford Street cleaned up of all the rubbish. All the dirt, people throwing about bottles and so forth.
Well, I think there should be a lot of reform in respect of all this pornography that's going on. I think they should be closed, a lot of them, especially in the West End. I think it's killing it.
You work here amongst it?
Yes, I work amongst it, and well, I worked in markets and what have you, but I think it should be stopped. I think it should be a big change.
I would like to see the transport system improved so that more people took transport and less people travel in their private motor cars. When you see one person in a car taking up all that road space, etc., I'd like to see the transport system improved to a point at which people felt they could leave their cars behind and use the transport system, so that I think that would serve everybody better.